Hi there and welcome. Steve Wills here. Thanks for joining me. This is the second video in an ongoing tutorial regarding workflow development. Just a quick note on where we've been in the last video. We've created a simple workflow that you can see on the graphic on the right part of your screen. We set user's name in the workflow document by role, as you could see there. We're creating two documents in the workflow just to show how we can route them differently depending on a value in the document. We allocate unique and sequential references to the documents, and of course send an email to notify the next users in the process that it's their turn to intervene. And they were actually going into the application via the emails themselves through that link. And as you can see, the documents have been routed based on the value of total, the higher amount going to the director. And a log, historical log, has been maintained in the document regarding each user intervention. And we've also personalized the email, the others being taken from a default value, and we've put others that have intervened in between time on copy. So how about today? Well, we're going to try to block the advancement of a document conditionally. That, of course, if there is certain essential information missing, you want to be able to stop that at the very beginning. So here is the workflow that we'll be looking to be put in place. We'll be combining manual and conditional routing, so the manager can both reject, send the document back to the author, or approve it. We'll be updating fields and hopefully our perspective a bit. I want to give a little background into the why Workflow Ascendant. We'll be providing a controlled space for user comments. Okay, for process controls, we want to create the routine to block the process conditionally. We will reference the routine in the initial state using code abstraction and hopefully seeing the result. So just to show you an example that we did in the last video, you can see here this is the routine that was called onOpen using code abstraction to actually load the names into the document. So that's the routine. And here's the connection between the text in the state document and the actual routine call. So we'll create our routine. I'll simply copy that in there. And just to give you a quick overview of our error reporting system, you can use this or not, it's up to you. But this is where the red dots come from and the error message displayed. It just simply means copying and pasting that particular field, renaming it. And of course it's a wingding, which gives us that nice little red dot. Okay, so to complete the code abstraction, here we'll put in the name of the routine that we used in the state document, and now the actual routine call. So here in our initial state, we will add the text, the code abstraction, and this will be executed when the user selects the send button. And we can add any number of these calls. So let's give it a try. We'll send it off. And as you can see, the error message is displayed and the document is blocked from advancing. And here it advances. Manual and conditional routing. So here what we'll be looking to do first is to create the new states, then the rules associated with those states, and then of course hopefully seeing the result. So we will, of course, be modifying, we will be adding these new states to be modified. Next, rejected, and then lastly, withdrawn. Now we'll go back and, we'll first check here. You can see the states are not accessible because we haven't created the rules to access those states. Really like the way I did that. It makes it consistent with the documents. All right, so we'll add two new rules, and this is going to connect us to the other two states. So here we'll say to be modified and rejected. Always try to maintain the same order. To be modified, rejected, approved, just so users are used to seeing the same order. All right, that's the log that will update. Here we'll look at the notifications. That's going back to the author. And we'll save that. And then we'll modify to be modified and add two rules here. You see that list comes from the field documents that we created in the first video. WA author is a reserved field. Very simple. It's a calculated on creation. And we don't need to put withdrawn here because it would be the same thing. That would be redundant. We'll update the historical log with these entries. Get that right. All right, then the notifications. WA history authors, those are the authors maintained by the system, whoever intervened in the document. And so now it looks good. So let's give it a try. So we'll be creating documents with different values to show that they are routed accordingly. So this will be the higher amount, that'll be above the threshold going to the director. And here I'm going to cheat, I'm just going to copy and paste these. All right, so this one should go directly to archive, this being the lower amount if I approve it. So as you can see here, went directly to the archive. Here over the threshold, this should be routed to director. As you can see here. We'll reject this document. Again, going straight to the archive. And then we'll send this one back to the author for modification. And as you can see here, the log was maintained as we would expect. All right. So updating fields, here I'm going to be introducing a notion called actions. That was that last tab that you saw in the state document. And this allows us to update fields in the workflow document based on the rule that was selected. So let's start with a simple example. We'll say hello world. We'll update the title of the document. Now these are interpreted at formula statements, so they have to be correctly, syntactically correct. So we'll put the quotes around it. Let's give that a try. Now going into the document, as you can see, the title was updated accordingly. Now let's try something a bit more interesting. Let's go into the actions. Let's not change title, put anything there, ABC. And now let's set the WA error message. And here we'll use a formula. sure you can work your way through that. If the title is empty, we'll display that error message. We'll hit the send button, and there's the message. But why all these mechanisms? Let's put that into perspective. For example, going back into created, as you saw here, on open, on send, we can put everything into these kinds of routines on the back end. If we do that, for example, we don't need to use notifications, actions, certainly not necessary. How about routing rules? All that can be put in the back end as well. Get rid of that. And of course, updating the log. So why do we have all these mechanisms? What is it that we're actually trying to do? What we're trying to do is to maximize the participation of Power Business users. How do we do it? Very simply, you need to see state documents as structured routines for Power Business users. And that is the reason for Workflow Ascendant. So going into the specifics of actions, here's a good example of using it. I'll put up that diagram there. This is actually on the workflow document in Domino Designer. So let me first show you how it works, and then show you the formula statements that make it happen. Yeah, always put in controls at the end. Irritating when you're trying to test other things. So when a manager wants to send a document back to the author for modification, of course it's imperative that the manager tells the user what needs to be changed, and it's also imperative that the manager cannot change what the original author put. Otherwise, you have a problem of data integrity. So here's the author. Can now go in and see what the manager wrote, and can't change what the manager wrote. So each user has his or her own area to contribute comments. So here, lastly, the manager comes in, sees the changes that have been made, and of course can add more comments, should he or she so choose, and send it off in the workflow. So, how is it done? First, going into created, as we'll see here in the Actions tab, basically two different parts. There will be the initial part, which corresponds to the current user, and then the second portion, which corresponds to the next user in the workflow chain. And it just simply follow the pattern of incrementing those numbers. And that's all I did when I put them in. It's just basically copying and pasting. Again, same thing here, except the number's been incremented by 1 onto the manager. There's also a very robust syntax checker for state documents in particular. As you can see, the number on each side of the table has to be the same, the number of entries, and the formulas have to be correct. Otherwise, it will flag as an error. All right, well, that's all for this video. Thanks for joining me. I hope you'll be joining me next week as we dive into the different types of document routing. Thanks so much for joining me.